Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Addison, whatever time you're listening, and thank you for joining us for our ASD Chat for All podcast. We have lots of fun and exciting things on the horizon for Addison School District 4, and this podcast allows us the opportunity to connect with our parents and guardians, families, and community to celebrate our students, their accomplishments, and so much more. Your hosts for this podcast are ASD4 Superintendent Dr. Nick Sutton and myself, Dean Constantopoulos. You interested in hearing more about what's going on in District 4? Come on in and have a chat. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of our ASD Chat for All podcast. My name's Dean Constantopoulos. I'll be one of your hosts this afternoon, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dr. Nick Sutton. You know, Nick, it's been the first week of school this week. What do you think?
You know, it's fun. It's fun. The routine is fun. Schools are not schools without kids. I know I tease you a lot about the weather stuff, but as we record this, it is past that insanely hot couple of days. So
I'm glad we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, kids were hot, parents were hot, teachers are hot, but podcasters were hot as well. So
that's right.
It's nice. It's nice being at this place, Mr. Dean. But you know, as we geared up for school, we did a lot of things, and one of the things that we did to really make sure that we were as ready as we could for this school year involves our guest today. So what do we got going on, Dean?
That's absolutely right. And you know what? So we actually have our guest that has been on our podcast more than anyone else.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that.
So
wow.
Congratulations to Dr. Kim Lohse, our Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. Welcome for a third time. It's good to have you.
I should get a free t-shirt for this, or like a blazer, like on Saturday Night Live.
That, you know what, that comes after the fourth episode. So we'll have to add over one more.
Right.
But let's go ahead and jump right in. So we know that's the first week of school, and there's a buzz going on around the district. So tell me, how has it been for you the first week? Do you have any fun or interesting stories, or just what's the vibe around the district?
Well, I'll tell you, I've actually spent a lot of time at Indian Trail. As you know, we have a lot of new teachers and administrators there this year, and I will tell you the vibe that I'm feeling is very welcoming and very exciting, and I think maybe we even talked about that earlier. Maybe we put out some social media stuff today about it. I've very much enjoyed the time. I've been trying to make it a point to go outside and greet people and talk to people, and really excited about the possibilities at the middle school this year so far, and across the district. I haven't had as many opportunities to get to all of the elementary schools yet, but it's been a really great start to the year. I don't think we've run into a lot of issues, and we're really happy to have kids back, as Nick alluded to earlier.
And that's such a good point, just to go off of what you were saying, like just walking around Indian Trail, like during the lunch hour, you see the brand new deans walking around, interacting with the kids, and all the administration is out there. And it's really cool to see. So thank you for saying that.
Very well said. So as many of the public is aware, we put on a full-scale emergency drill at Ardmore Elementary. It was August 4th. That was a little while ago already. But for anybody that wasn't aware, Dr. Lohse, what was this about? What were the parties involved? And kind of what was the purpose?
So our full-scale drill, which we called Ardmore-geddon, was a collaborative effort within our community and our county. It was intended to test multiple concepts. So we included police, fire, local hospitals, OHEM, which is the Office of Emergency Management within the county, and then other local agencies, other police and fire departments from the area. And what we did was plan out a full-scale exercise with an active threat at Ardmore School and the Early Learning Center in order to test not only our school response, but also the police and fire response in the event that there ever were some type of threat of that level, God forbid, in any of our buildings. Recently, we've undergone some new training that established a new unified command structure between police, fire, and the school. This is fairly new training training that's happening across the state of Illinois. We have been able to practice that with our agencies. It's very important because the school needs to be just as in the loop as police and fire during an incident of that nature. And it also allowed us to test out our reunification procedure. So in the event that there were a threat, we would need to move to an off-site location to reunify parents and students with one another safely and as efficiently as possible. And that is something that most school districts don't plan for or prepare for or practice. And so it was a really good opportunity to actually practice that on a larger scale than we're normally able to. And so through that planning that took place over a year with all of those entities, we were able to test all of those different structures on August 4th. It was a pretty big drill. If you lived in the area, there were a lot of emergency vehicles. We had hundreds of participants from all of the agencies, the county, and then, of course, school personnel who played the role of staff and parents. But it was a very helpful drill. We learned a lot during that process that will help us be even better going forward.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I know that just the response on social media, the response on just from people on our contact form on the website, people were definitely curious about what was going on. And I think that all the entities in Addison did a pretty good job about letting the community know this is a drill and not to be alarmed or anything like that. But to kind of go off of what you were saying a little bit, so it's clear as to why this sort of drill would benefit us as a school, right? We want to make sure that our kids are safe, that our families are safe, and that we're providing the best information to our families as well in a situation like this. It seems, though, that this is the sort of, and you alluded to this, that this is the kind of exercise that really does benefit the entire community. It's a whole community effort to make this work. So can you elaborate a little bit on like how closely we work with these different agencies in Addison, and just how interconnected are these agencies with the school district? Are we this connected just for situations like this, or is it more so if there's ever any kind of an issue, or if there's ever a time that we need to reach out to these agencies? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So we are really fortunate in Addison. I've worked in a couple of different communities, and I've talked to other school districts. It's not the case in every community, but the police, fire, and school district and village, I have to give everybody a shout out, work very closely together here. And we are not just an emergency-only relationship.
Yeah.
We have we have a really great, I would say, model for most communities here in Addison. Our police and fire are very active within our schools. We see them at a lot of our school events. We see them in our schools. Our police do regular walkthroughs of our buildings. We talk to them pretty regularly, follow up on situations. Having a school resource officer in the building helps to build that bridge as well. Our fire department, and I will even say our public works department, because I've failed to mention them. They were also involved in the larger scale drill on August 4th, but they're very involved. We had them at our kindergarten carnival with their trucks, and I think it really shows how this community comes together during good times and bad times. And I think that building those relationships allows us to really utilize this command structure in a much more effective way, too, because we have built relationships with all of the people within these agencies. And I think that that's probably most critical during a large-scale incident. We had an incident back in April, actually, at Indian Trail. Thankfully turned out not to be anything of concern, but the response was excellent because, first of all, people care and they want to make sure that things are safe, but the fact that we could all get together, talk about what needed to be done, and work together through that incident, I think just made it go a lot smoother. One of the things that they've heard me say multiple times is there's just no room for egos when it comes to emergencies. And the one thing I think we do best in Addison is we kind of check that at the door, and we're able to have very honest conversations about what went well and what didn't following an incident. And I think that will also continue to make us stronger because we really do reflect on our procedures and our response so that we can make things better.
Yeah, well, that's got to be reassuring for the community to hear that we really do take our time to make sure that we can be as best as we can be in situations like this. So thank you.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Lohse definitely has an expertise in this area, and she's probably too modest to mention just how much so. So I guess here's my question. How do you think we did? And even more important for any parents and families out there listening, how prepared do you think we are as a district for something like this ever were to happen?
Well, I think we did well, but we learned a lot. If I'm being perfectly honest, there were several things that didn't go quite to plan or how we hoped they would go, but I think that's probably what's most important in actually performing these types of drills.
Well said.
And we didn't want it to be perfect. If you talk to anybody on the planning committee, from the police chief to the fire chief to anybody involved, we would all agree we didn't want it to go well because we wanted to know where those holes were.
Absolutely.
So I think a few things that I can tell you. Communication is always the hardest during an incident because there's so much information that's flowing between so many parties that it's very hard to communicate information to everybody who may need it. One thing that we always say is that we're going to give you whatever information we can in that moment, but we ask that people are patient. In the event that there really is an incident in one of our buildings, we will get you the information as we have it and as it becomes available. It may just not be as fast as you want it, and there's not a lot we can do about that except ask for some grace and patience. On the other end, our intentions are good, and we do want to get that information to you. Communications are hard, just even getting everybody from staging to the impacted site. That's always a challenge because we have other communities that are responding, and other communities train differently than we do. One of the things that came out of this is we talked a little bit about a common language and common training that should be taking place countywide so that all of us are on the same page. And that's not just police and fire, that's school districts as well. And so the DuPage County Safety Task Force has been pushing a reunification process that's similar so that everybody has the same language, same materials, and same process so everybody can support each other. And my understanding is that there are going to be more trainings offered around the unified command structure that our community is trained in, and so that other communities can have that training as well, so that if they are to respond within our community, they will have received that same training.
That's amazing.
Yes. I mean, we're very fortunate. Our fire is trained in rescue task force, which I would like to highlight because I think that's critical when we talk about injured. They are able to respond into a building that may not be fully cleared and start taking survivors and injured out and to hospitals with police escorts. It's a very specialized training. It's very dangerous, but our primary goal is to prevent loss of life. And we're very fortunate that our community has invested in that training. We train annually with that. They train in our schools every summer for that, along with the police. And so I feel very fortunate, but not every community has those resources accessible to them either. And so those are things that the drill really helped us to better understand. And so we're going to be pushing for those types of trainings across the county as well. We actually had our debrief yesterday, and they talked a little bit more about how we'll see more of those, I think, quarterly now within DuPage County, so other communities can also learn and implement those things. Through the reunification process specifically, we do need to tweak some roles and processes. Having people actually go through as parents helped us to see where maybe things were either slowed down or information wasn't flowing between the different parts of it. And so we'll be tweaking some of that going forward. We've also decided that we'll do an annual reunification training of our staff. So it won't be a drill like what we saw on August 4th, but training of our staff who may be called to a reunification site to work it. We will be doing an annual training in June, and that most likely will have our district office staff, our office secretaries, principals, and administrators, so that everybody remembers what that process is, and it's easier for everybody to ensure that those roles are fulfilled. And then I think the one thing I want to highlight also is we practice the public information officer part of it. So Dean, you're a big part of that. Actually,
Yes.
Dean is our director of community relations. And so he does a lot of our communications for the district. And so he was able to practice how that information gets flowed back out into the community along with the village and the high school district so that everybody's sending out the same message.
That's
and
right.
I would say overall that went very well.
I'm glad about that. That was it was intense, and it was my first time doing that sort of thing, and I definitely felt like I learned a lot, and I learned a lot from my contemporaries because I know Danny Brink over at District 88 and Don Weiss over at the Village, in particular, and Joanne over at the police department. They are so knowledgeable in their field, so I really felt like I was able to kind of hop on their back a little bit, so to speak, and just kind of learn a lot from them. It was very helpful for me in particular.
And it's a challenge, right? Communicating during a major incident is very hard because there's information that's not public necessarily because it could impact an investigation on behalf of the police. And it's hard sometimes to get information out fast enough. As I alluded earlier, everybody wants the information immediately, but we have to make sure that whatever is being sent out is consistent and has also been approved by law enforcement prior to going out. And so it is very stressful, and there's a lot of information coming to you, and you have to discern what can I tell people and what can I not tell people. And then people often ask a lot of questions, or they want more information. We may not be able to provide that, and that can be very frustrating as well, for not only for us but also for the public. And we totally understand and respect that, but it creates a lot of challenges.
And just to piggyback off what you're saying, like part of the practice for us was kind of like a mock social media response, and that just goes to show you, like, social media is so huge that a lot of families are going to go there to find out more information, and we need to make sure that the information provided on there is accurate, because as we know, sometimes social media doesn't have the most accurate information. So we need to make sure that's the case as well. So
I love it. I just think it's cool that, reunification and communication, while it's certainly relative to like some sort of school emergency, there could be a gas leak. There could be inclement weather. Like there are a number of variables where those types of concepts come up, and so I'm glad you're able to communicate just how ready we are. So, Dean, if anybody wants to communicate more to Dr. Lohse, what would be the easiest way, if there's, in all seriousness, any parent, family member out there that's like, this is important, interesting stuff, how do I reach out to you?
You can call me at 630-458-2432, or you can email me at klohse@asd4.org. I'd be happy to speak to anybody who would like more information or would like to learn more about safety in our school district.
Excellent. And Dr. Sutton, same question for you.
I have district email like everybody else, and I try to be very accessible and responsive in Sutton at asd4.org. I'm also hanging out on X, which used to be Twitter. I'm getting used to that. At Dr. Nick Sutton, easy place to find me. Dean, same question to you.
I'm glad you said X, because I would have said Twitter. I was going to forget.
I'm trying.
You can find me on X as well, at Addison SD4. Well, Dr. Lohse, thank you so much for joining us. I know that this is something that I really wanted to talk about as well, so I'm glad we got the chance to. So thank you for joining us. And for everyone else listening, stay tuned for next time. Thank you for tuning in to our ASD Chat for All podcast. Check us out at www.asd4.org, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts for more. We'll be back soon with another episode, so stay tuned.